Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the Multiverse FunRaiser. You just heard an ad explaining how to donate to the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health, which is doing very important work making sure that you can advocate for yourself or your loved ones if you're having chest pain, to make sure that doctors look for more than just a heart attack. There are other things that can be going on there. If you're watching a replay, check out day 1, Amy Yazbek, who is the founder of the organization, explain more about that in detail. But for the moment, this is the Indie Authors Panel. I am so excited. I have some amazing guests. So I will be bringing them on screen one at a time. If you're watching this with video, I will be putting up a little graphic with usually like the website or some titles or stuff. If you want to do a screen grab really fast, I have 5 authors and we're going to have a ton to talk about. So at the end, they'll say where to find themselves, but you can also do a quick screen grab of the images I'm going to put up. First, let's bring on Aunt Donna Carleen. How you doing?
Doing okay.
All right. It is so good to see you. Some of my images got deleted. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what genre you write in? I can pop it back on in 1 second. And what some of your most recent titles are.
I write in several different genres. I have 2 series in what I call crime drama romance. I have a fantasy book. Waiting on a Star is my last book. It's a romance sort of book. Let's see. I also have a fiction novel regarding the reunion of Woodstock called Woodstock Dreams, about 3 people who were at the original and get together again working on the reunion. I have an adult historical romance novel. I cover about anything.
All right. So everyone, lulu.com is where you can find Donna's books in case you are listening to the audio. I'm going to bring our next author on and we will get into some real meat and potatoes conversations once we've got everybody in the studio. Next, I would like to bring on Molly Daniels, who has also written under Kenzie Michaels. I don't have a photo of a title because I wanted to make sure we could tell what was written under Kenzie Michaels versus what was written under Molly Daniels. So why don't you tell us what genre it is, and maybe now is a good time to tell us if there's, a difference between your 2 author names.
Really the only difference between the 2 author names is I tell everyone Molly is author peeking in the bedroom door while Kenzie's standing beside the bed taking notes. Kenzie's my wild child. She writes the adult contemporary and sci-fi romance, while as Molly I do more of women's fiction, children's books, and now I'm kind of getting away from romance entirely and doing just pretty much paranormal fiction.
All right. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. And I'm bringing on Keisha from A Cuff Creations now. For those who are wondering, I'm just going left to right for what's on the screen underneath me. I would never play favorites between these 5 amazingly talented authors unless they were going to send me a bunch of free stuff. Then that person would be my favorite. Wink, wink.
I know I'm your favorite, so it's okay. Hi, I'm really bad at introductions, but I am Keisha Acuff. I am a self-published author. I've also been published in a couple different anthologies. If you guys want to check out my latest solo novel, it is Him by Keisha Acuff.
All right. And if you are able to see the screen, Keisha had the forethought to give us a QR code to scan to get to her socials, and she can answer your questions there too if you're having trouble finding her any other way. Thank you for introducing yourself. I'm going to bring on Chris Jowers now, even though that's out of order because he's throwing a fit in the green room. How dare you misbehave like that, Chris?
I'm very upset that Uncle.
So pouty. That's okay, Uncle Carl. We'll save the best for last.
My name is Chris Jowers. I am an author. My first novel, Lostborn, was published by Proceed Productions, and it is a dark fantasy horror action novel. And my current book that's out now is called Necessary Evil, and it is a horror anthology that is a little bit grimdark horror combined with humor. But the purpose of the whole idea of the book is the creatures, the monsters, the demons are actually going after the real evil on the world, which is people. So there's a bit of an Agents of Karma feel to it when it comes to the bad guys.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. Hello, it's Carl, or Uncle Carl, as some of us call him.
Mm-hmm. That's fine. Yes, I'm author of several nonfiction books and some fiction books. The most recent has been The Mad Gasser Cheerleader of Calhoun County and its sequel, The Return of the Mad Gasser, or The Mad Gasser Returns, whichever you want to call it. They're also available on lulu.com.
All right. Well, now that we're all on the screen, you guys can feel free to speak to each other as well. And because, I know some of you know each other, but yeah, you're
All of us
talented and
know each other.
I don't know Chris.
I'm thinking I'm the newer person.
Evidently. I don't know that Witzman dude at all. I mean,
I stalk everyone, so you guys, none of you are safe.
Right, careful, you'll end up stalked and then in Keisha's next novel.
Yes.
So
I've never met Chris before, but since his description of that book, I think we could get along just fine. When Donna watches something about ghost hunters or something like that, and I'm like, don't worry about the dead people. It's the live ones you have to worry about.
right, and Kelly at Phoenix Sisters says, at least Keisha's imaginary friends only eat children, so you're relatively safe. I don't know.
It depends because, y'all do act like children.
So for those who didn't know, earlier this morning on the special episode of Cryptid Crunch, Keisha shared with us that her imaginary friends eat children. So
my childhood imaginary friends were a little bit weird, okay?
Like that's any different from your adult imaginary friends?
I have real imaginary friends this time. Yeah, pretty much. You guys, if people aren't aware, in order to be a writer, especially if you write fiction, or even if you don't write fiction, you have to have a little bit of crazy in you.
A little bit?
A lot of bit of okay, Aunt Donna's a little over crazy, but I'm semi-normal. We'll go with that.
You have to kind of be crazy to be an author in the first place because you're going into a field that it's a crazy field. Mm-hmm. And your chances of success are not that great, with all the books you see out in the stores. And it's very difficult to get in there. And you kind of have to be a little wacky to want to be a writer.
Yes. And definitely have to have a very vivid imagination. We basically make up our own characters and talk to ourselves all day. And then we write it down. And then we publish it. And other people think it's cool. Well, honestly,
hopefully other people think it's cool.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I guess I'll start with Keisha since her children eating imaginary friends probably influenced the answer to this question a little bit. Remind everybody what genre you primarily write in, and then tell us why. Why is that the genre you picked?
Children's poetry. Okay. No. I had to go with that one first. So this isn't my main focus, but I do write children's poetry. I just thought it was hilarious. So I have been published in an anthology for some children's poetry. I have written a lot of children's poetry. I have not published my stuff solo yet for poetry. So, but I am in this beautiful book of poetry for children. But my main focus, my most recent book that I published. Did I publish it last year, Carl? Carl,
Yeah.
you know this.
I think
Yes.
so.
Okay. So I published it last year, but I've been working on this for actually I wrote it 7-8 years ago now. And it is kind of like I don't want to say full on horror, but it's kind of like a horror romance, just weirdness. If any of you know me personally, you'll understand. Basically, my personality in a book.
That's terrifying. Keisha, you're supposed
That's
to
not
be
scary at all.
promoting your book, not scaring us off. And I am joking, of course. Keisha's a super interesting person. You should buy anything she writes.
Good book, buy book. So I also, this is my most recent anthology that also came out last year, called The Aftermath. And this is basically just the aftermath of everything once COVID lockdowns were kind of lifted and the world was kind of getting back into the new normal.
Not much.
So
I might be.
I also
I
have
might be
another
free.
anthology that came out last year. So this is along the same lines. Those are just the ones that I have physical copies of, that I could find in my menage of everything. But my main focus that you guys don't really get to see because I haven't published many. I know Aunt Donna and Carl are going to jump on me after this and be like, we gotta get more, because they know that I have a stack, just a stack of unpublished work sitting in my desk, and they're like, you should probably do something with that. And I was like, yeah.
That's
But a
how
lot of-
him got published.
Yes, it is. I'm actually sure that they held me down with a pen in my hand and were like, this is happening now, do it. You don't get a choice.
That was an interesting
thanks.
night.
It was an interesting night.
Keisha
So,
wandered into a writer's group and told us she had something that was nearly finished, or a lot of stuff that was nearly finished. And we were like, why isn't it finished? And we said, pick one off the top. She picked that one, and we said, it'll be out by December. It will be out by December.
It was out by the beginning of the year because we had some last minute edits that we put in, but it was done by December. So it just didn't come out until the 1st.
Yeah, that was what, like in the September that we told you that was going to happen.
Yeah, you guys gave me like a couple month warning, and you were like, "We're gonna get this done whether you like it or not."
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So thanks.
Yeah.
But I officially have my first solo out. I think the first thing I ever published was back in 2016, and that was the children's poetry. But since then, I've been publishing things on a yearly basis. And so, I guess I don't have a choice now that I'm friends with you guys.
Right. Well, before we finish going around the circle talking about why y'all chose the genres you chose, I want to take a question from the audience. Sandra O asks, if it takes you months or years to write a fiction, how do you keep from being influenced by the current crime events in the news for any of the authors?
Okay, as a crime drama author, Hunter's Ridge was the first one. Writer meets cop. I can guarantee you at least one body drop in every story. I ignore it pretty much. I mean, I got to go with the world that I built myself. And as for years, sometimes these books are written in just maybe a month, because as you can see, it's not very big. But I pretty much ignore the real world, shall we say?
That's
I'm not sure Aunt Donna lives in the real world to begin with, y'all.
No.
This has caused me a bit of a problem very, very recently, because I was working on a novelization of The Somerton Man. And if you haven't heard about that mystery, in the late 40s, a gentleman was found dead on a beach in Australia. All of the clothing tags cut out of his clothes, no identification, no money on him whatsoever. And of course, everyone said he must have been a spy. There's a lot of confusing things about it. So I thought, I think I can write a narrative that would explain how that guy got on the beach. And I started working on that. And just like Sandra said, a news item came up recently. Through his DNA, they figured out who the gentleman was, or so they say. And so now I'm like, okay, now what do I do with that information? Because it doesn't fit in my story. So I'm stuck there right now for a bit.
Right? Do you make changes or do you not? So,
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a work of fiction.
Based on true events, which makes it more difficult when true events happen. You know, it was a mystery for 80 some years, and then they had to go solve it this year before I got the book out. No.
Oh,
Yeah.
those darn people.
Yeah, I know.
People doing their jobs, solving
know.
crimes-ish.
I actually ran into that with my novel that I published last year, because I was writing it during election time and all these heated events were happening and stuff like that. And I had a couple different editors on my book. And my first editor, she actually kind of contacted me and she's like, first of all, I'm going to point out that her and I have completely differing political views. That was interesting to begin with in general. But she was like, I don't know, since it was 7 years ago at the point, she's like, I don't know if it's still relevant enough to the story to keep it in there. And she was like, what would you like to do about it? So we did do a little bit of rewriting, just because the fact that I wrote it so long ago, to update it so that way we weren't like, I wasn't with the times in the book. So this way I was a little bit more updated once we fixed that. So unfortunately it happens, but that's what happens when times change.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Sandra. Thank you for that. What, Chris or Molly, did you guys have?
Well, for horror, it's a bit different because it's not so much when you're basing it on like real crime, but the problem that you have in this genre is what's popular in film or television. So, like, my rule is no zombies, period, because zombies have been done to death, and I have one or two great zombie ideas. But am I actually going to bring anything with humor or dialogue or a different kind of take on it that's going to be interesting, because it is just an overblown genre now, thanks to The Walking Dead, which did it, does it, and had Robert Kirkman did it great in comic books. The show did great as well. But it is something you have to pay attention to. But to me, it's like if you have an idea and a vision and a story that you want to tell, don't let anything sidetrack you from your idea. Just be aware of when you're releasing that idea as something to be bought, as a commodity, that there is a zeitgeist you have to deal with, whether that's putting a warning on your book because something is very similar to something that's just happened, and you don't want people to come in thinking that, I'm trying to capitalize on a horrible situation, little things like that. I really don't think you should ever let those things deter you from what you're doing, because I've known great people with great ideas that just gave up 90 pages in because something vaguely similar happened on the news or something vaguely similar got released on Netflix,
Yeah. Molly?
Yeah, I was going to say, Carl, just keep writing it, and then maybe you could add something at the top that says, recent events have shown da 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 da. This is my fictional account, something like that.
I may have to do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I really have to applaud Chris's Zombies Done to Death. I like that.
I didn't catch that, but yes, that is very nice.
Well,
However, I
whatever.
am a zombie fan, so that makes me sad. Do all the zombies. Everybody that's listening, if you're doing zombies, do the zombies because that's one of my favorite things. Keep
Mhm.
doing it because I need some. I need some
I have
stuff.
one that I started about 10 years ago, so I need to get back to it.
That's okay. Like I said, it took me 7 years to get my last one out. So if you've got one sitting there, just knock the dust off of it.
Mhm.
Get that
Yeah.
out there so I can read it.
Yeah.
Also,
And I was also going to say I was blessed because my women's fiction series takes place in the 1980s, so I draw on my memories and how we perceived events happening back in the day. And in one of my sci-fi series, I'm trying very hard I'm trying to figure out a way to kind of work in certain events, only give it a twist in my alien world, but still get the point across. So I'm trying to figure that out.
yeah, I can imagine probably near future stuff, like not very far into the future is probably one of the hardest ones to figure out how current events should influence it because you want it to be in the future and have your own world building and views, but if it's near future, then you still kind of need to build on the world we're in right now because of course people would still be talking about stuff that happened 15 or 20 years ago or something, So
So the only problem with that is my view for the future. I'm pretty sure we're just a dumpster fire. I'm super upbeat about how things have been going.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote the finale to my Arbor U series in 2002, and it doesn't take place until 2004 to 2006. So, but I didn't get it published till 2 years ago. So the challenge then was going back and fixing everything that I got wrong because Dick Clark had retired from the Rock and Eve, so I had to replace him in there with different things, and I had been a while since I'd actually watched Dick Clark's Rock and Eve, and I'm like, oh, they don't actually play ballads, so I had to go back and fix all that.
All right. Well, if we're wrapped up on that, who wants to go next explaining why they chose to write in the genre they chose to write in? Duke it out. Get ugly.
I don't know that I choose any genre. It's what the voices in my head say. You need to get this down. You need to put this down, and then a book comes out.
All right. Do any of you guys feel like that? Like you don't have a choice? Because that's something I hear from authors a lot. For those of you who are listening who don't know me, I'm also a fiction editor. And so I'm always like, oh, my authors tell me, I'm talking about people I've edited for, but I have authors who tell me all the time, they're like, yeah, this character did this thing that I didn't want them to do. And I'm like, you're the author. Okay. So
Yep. I woke up one night, I had this angry man in my head telling me his story. And it was kind of in that early not awake thing. And then he went into it a second time, and I'm listening to this angry man. I'm like, okay. Well, when he went into it at the third time, that's when I got to get up. So I got up, wrote it all down. I don't even think I went back to bed, but I took it to my writer's group like the next week. And I'm like, okay, because we were kicking around the idea of starting this story or anthology. And I said, I think I've started the antho, here, what do you all think of this? And where do you think I should go with it? And one of my crit partners goes, I so see zombies in this next scene. And I was like, I don't do zombies. You write it. So we were kind of figuring out it would be a collaborative event. Well, they never held up their end of the bargain. And then I ended up watching a couple episodes of Walking Dead. And then a week or so later, I brought up that document, and the next line popped into my head, and now my zombies are still twitching in the ER. So who knows?
Who knew this episode was going to be so full of zombies and voices and eating children? Carl's been raising his hand every time we're like, the voices. Carl's hand goes up.
I'm with you, Crayle. I am one of those writers that controls what's going on. And I do not let characters decide, oh, I'm going to go do this. And they will do what I tell them to do. And they better like it.
Right.
Carl's been an overlord.
Aunt Donna's just pushed her hands down and shook her head. What's on your mind, Aunt Donna?
Well, you know, that Witzman dude's a bit of a control freak. Some of us just get told what to put down. We're called pantsers because we don't make out a little, what do you call that
An outline?
Was it a
An
little
outline?
Yeah, that thing.
You don't have a one-note notebook to control where all your stuff is, man.
No, Carl, we're not as
That's
all
same
able
as it.
as you.
That's not the same as an outline. I mean, I put down, okay, this has to happen. I got to drop at least one body if I'm writing in the Hunter's Ridge. I mean, my last Hunter's Ridge book was written because I got obsessed by Helen Reddy's song, Angie Baby.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I got to write that song, that character. She's got to be in this book. And after that, Angie's like, put down where I bloodied Susie's nose in 3rd grade, and when I bit her on the playground and bashed her head on the floor in 6th grade, and okay.
Kelly and Phoenix Sisters asks, now are you dropping bodies fictionally or sacrificing people to the writing gods?
Don't tell our secrets. Shh.
Yeah, Kelly, stop telling their secrets.
It's a crime drama. Somebody's got to die in order for my two main characters to get involved.
Like, they can't just have somebody go missing or like possible die.
Yeah,
No. Okay.
Wow.
You
I
just
hear you, Donna.
they gotta die.
let's kill somebody off. Yes. Okay, so we know where Aunt Donna's going.
Now
No, with killing people in your books. That's what I'm talking
it
about.
depends on the series. The Beth and Hill series, it is also a crime drama romance. I can't guarantee you dead bodies in it, but I can guarantee you some awesome fighting scenes.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know. Awesome fighting scenes in Donna's work. Hey, if you are just now joining us, this is day 2 of the Multiverse FunRaiser. We are raising fun for a good cause. We're supporting the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health this year. There's information on how to donate scrolling at the bottom of your screen. And at the end of this panel, we'll play a quick video with more details on that. I just want to specify again how important the mission of the Foundation for Aortic Health is, the John Ritter Foundation, because people are misdiagnosed, and it is so important to know what questions to ask your doctor and what some of the possibilities are for what's going on with your own health. So thank you to Amy Yasbeck for being so involved with us and for starting that foundation. Oh, and there's a giveaway. So every $10 that you donate, you get another entry in the giveaway. So who has not answered yet why they pick the genre they pick? I know Molly writes multiple, and apparently it's because somebody shows up in her dreams and yells at her about it. Carl, have you answered yet?
I have not. I started out with nonfiction because there were certain ideas I wanted to get across. Like I've written a book about how to improve your memory, because that was one of my studies when I was in college, was the improvement of human memory. How can you make it better? Then I got into computers and I wrote a couple books about how to do some particular program, So, but I always was writing fiction in the background. I never knew if it would ever come up. then I got inspired by watching all these YouTube videos about mysteries. And so that's what got me into the Mad Gasser cheerleader world, because there really was a Mad Gasser in a small town in Illinois. He went around during the time of World War II, and he actually sprayed this paralyzing gas into people's homes. But nobody ever caught him, and they never could figure out why he did it. There was no real motive that anybody could figure out, because he never stole anything or broke into the homes. So I thought, interesting. Well, I think I can create a motive. Okay. And okay, I'll say nobody gets killed in my book. Okay. And there are no fight scenes exactly.
It's just
But
creepy.
it is creepy as all get out. There are parts of the thing when I was writing it, I creeped myself out. And it ended on a note that a lot of people didn't particularly, they weren't happy with that. They said sequel, sequel, sequel. So that's how the Mad Gasser Cheerleader Returns came about.
So, you've at least had a taste of your own medicine. If you're going to bully other authors into writing their stuff, they can turn around and do it to you too. That's right.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. And I've even had somebody say, you need a third one. And I said, hey, wait until you read the second one before you push on the third one, because there's a particular thing that happens at the end of that one. Then I made sure there would be no sequels.
Yeah. Well, you scared Keisha away.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Oh, Keisha
I'm
read
just
the
kidding,
book.
y'all.
That's why.
I'm kidding, y'all. Keisha will be back when she can. She just had a tech problem with her computer. That is, technology allows us to do so many great things. Like for me to come into your home or your office right now, all creepy like, saying that the weirdest way that I can, to force you to listen to my writers. But also, sometimes we have problems. It happens. It happens. It's a
Especially
lot
when
to
you
manage.
live out in the middle of nowhere like Keisha does.
She does, yeah. So, all right. Well, one of the ones I always want to make sure that I have time to ask is, what is your advice for people who are most of the way done with like the actual story and are like, I don't know how to get published? Like, what do you tell someone who, like, the writing, they've mostly got it and they're like, okay, but now what?
Reach out to one of us and we can definitely
There's
put
this
you in
excellent
touch.
show
Yes.
every other Tuesday night on YouTube on Michaela Jade's YouTube channel called Tidbits and Scribbles. Come into that, and you might see a couple people that's here, but we try to give advice, we try to answer questions, and help people along that way to just open up to newbies. As for publishing, when I was in my early 20s, I tried going the regular route. You have to write a cover letter. You have to find out which publisher is doing your genre. You have to mail that out. You have to wait.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm lazy. I'm the first person to admit that. That was an awful lot of work. So I'm like, okay, I'll just write my stories for myself. Then this Witzman dude comes into my life and says, how about publishing a book of your poetry? And I'm like, okay, whatever. And it went rather well. So there's a second book of poetry. And then here a couple of years ago, it's like, well, why don't we try your fiction work? Okay. That's when he discovered Lulu.com. I now have 12 books out.
So the
I'm
real
bullying her a
advice,
lot.
the real advice, what I'm getting out of this entire panel, if you've got the writing at least most of the way done, or the story at least most of the way finished in your head, to get from there to published is to make friends with Uncle Carl and Aunt Donna.
I can attest that is a true statement, because like, don't get me wrong, I had things published before I met them, but I would not have a solo novel published if it was not for them.
Yeah. And Molly,
Especially since one of the biggest things besides helping edit was this beautiful man right there. I don't know where he is on everybody else's screen, but is the one that actually did my cover for me. So this time I'm going to, sorry if I disappeared earlier because I have really bad sinuses going on right now. And I went to grab a Kleenex and I hit the power button because it's just one of those sensor ones.
Oopsie.
But Carl is the one that helped me do my cover. So thank you, Carl. But
I'm
yes.
getting so much better at covers now.
yeah, Dawn Doulas says the networking they provide is phenomenal. I think that's talking about authors in general, maybe, but if you're talking about like these authors on the screen, you are also correct. And Molly mentioned earlier, reach out to one of us. I have found that the author community is very connected. Chris, do you want to give us your advice for going from mostly written to now I'm published?
Well, Necessary Evil was pretty much like a crucible or a trial by fire, because I had a friend of mine had just announced he was going to do the Memphis Comic Expo, which is like one of the best conventions in the Mid-South. It's always a great time, and they bring in a lot of big name DC, Marvel, and indie comic people. And my life literally went to garbage by the time I got my table to finish the book. So I dedicated myself to doing that. And I was amazed from the first time I tried writing, right before I did Lostborn. I thought about doing self-publication. I looked into it, and it was just, it was a slog to try and get through and try and to go through all of the minefields and booby traps that were out there. And now it really is not that difficult.
Right.
Sites like Lulu give you quality books. Like, I was amazed when I got my copies of Necessary Evil, and professional authors and professional comic people were looking at the book. And I'm not talking about my writing, just the quality of the book was shelf worthy. You could go right up on Barnes and Noble, boom, and look great. So the resources are out there, but you really have to be a hustler. If you want to be successful, no publisher is going to push your idea like you do, because they've got 50 other books. They got 50 other authors to take care of. No one's going to sell it like you. And if you're going to do it at conventions, please remember to be professional.
Yeah.
Yes,
That is what's going to separate you from everyone else. Be professional. When you show up, you are showing up like it's a job interview every single day.
Yep. Ryan Permission says, hello, indie authors, you rock, and specifically to Carl, that it's good to see you. Keisha, you were starting to say something?
I wanted to kind of piggyback off of Chris was going over how, you have to push your own book. A lot of people don't realize that to a lot of us, writing the book is the easiest part. It is the easiest part. We're like, hey, look, an idea. Do. The editing and the putting yourself out there and actually getting your book out is the hardest thing I feel like I've ever had to do, because, I don't have somebody sitting there. Like, some of my books are published through publishers. So, like, they do, push the book and they have it other places for you. But when you self-publish, there is so much work and effort that has to go into putting your book out there. You've got to go to different cons. You've got to go to different, pretty much everything, and just be like, sit at a table and be like, okay, look at all these people just ignoring me and pretending I'm not here. This is fun. I appreciate this. Thank you.
Okay.
Those that are older will remember maybe that there used to be advertisements on the radio or on in newspapers about books. They'd advertise books. Publishers, when was the last time you saw a publisher put out an ad? It's not happening.
Yeah.
So they are not pushing your book either.
James Patterson. I see
Yeah.
his.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
about all they'll do is the ones they know, oh, this will sell anyway, but maybe we'll sell a few more million copies if we put an ad on it. Yeah. Those are the guys that get all the money for the advertising.
And a lot of people don't realize that if
No.
you are a published author, selling even 100 copies of your book is a win.
Mm-hmm.
Because even getting that far, that's a lot of effort. People are like, okay, you're going to publish this book tomorrow. You're going to sell thousands of copies. And then you're like, after publishing and editing and all this other stuff, I made a whole 50 cents off that book.
Yeah.
So a lot of
Yeah.
people don't understand that concept of it, and then they will actually stop writing
Mhm.
because they're like, well, my book flopped, it didn't sell. Like, they don't realize that that's the normal. Like,
Yeah.
I don't actually know a lot of authors that have sold thousands, millions of books unless they write thousands of books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and something that doesn't mean that the writing wasn't good. That means that the marketing wasn't done. If your book isn't selling, you need to make sure you're sending it to the right people, and you also need to make sure you keep being active. Like once you're published, you're not done working. And I do want to piggyback also really quickly on when Keisha mentioned people walking by you when you have a table set up. So authors in particular, so I sell stuff at tables at conventions as part of my other job that isn't editing, and you have to talk to people first. And so if you're stuck for what to talk to people about or a way to get people to come over to your table, if it's quiet, just stand up and start reading the description on the back of your book. You wrote that to get people's attention. If the book isn't in their hand, just read it.
That's a good
Do
idea.
it.
See,
Mhm.
my thing is I'm crazy and I will literally talk to anybody. And so there was this guy walking by my table at a con, and I was like, I love your sword. It had nothing to do with my book,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I started talking to this guy. I knew he was like, you could tell. I was like, when you play D&D and stuff like that, you can tell other people that play D&D and stuff. So I looked at him and I was like, okay, I like your sword. And then we got to talking, and guess who bought like all of my books and some of my artwork? Just because I told him, hey, I like your sword.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't let him walk by.
Right.
Was it
I
obvious?
would, yeah,
Probably, but
yeah.
And if you do not go into this thinking you're going to be a person that goes to conventions and sells a bunch of books every time, you just don't. And here's why.
Yeah.
An artist can sell a $10 or $20 print, and they sell a lot of them, and that costs them cents to make. Literally costs them a few cents to make. And I'm not calculating the amount of time and skill it takes for them to create that art. Just talking about the actual money that they're out. But for you to sell your book, you're sometimes maybe making half back, depending on what you're charging, and then you really have to pay attention to the market and what other people are charging, because you're asking people to make an investment in you. Your personality at that table is what sells that book.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great networking opportunity.
Yeah.
Your sales are really not going to come from convention work. Online sales are probably how you move most of your units. And publishing companies, the big dogs, are looking for authors who bring their own audience with them now. They want, if you self-publish 3 or 4 books, great, because that's how you get started doing it.
Yeah.
Christy Golden, who I had a very good chance to meet, is a huge author for Warcraft and Blizzard. She's written a ton of Warcraft novels, and she works on the game itself. She was a fan fiction author to begin with. And she developed such a fan base that it got her attention. But that was a ton of work and talent that got her. So, I mean, that's just part of the deal now. It's like being an independent author is like how a lot of the big authors these days get discovered.
True. I'd like to revisit the who you talk to when you're ready to publish a book, and go to the who do you not want to talk to. Be very leery of local writers groups. They can be good,
Yeah.
But we were invited to the relaunching of a local writers group here after COVID. So we went, and there was a young lady there who had self-published her book. And they were all like, oh, that's fine. Now you need to really get published and send that to a publisher.
That
And-
annoys me so
Yeah.
much.
And her book looked fine. It looked great. I mean, I kind of thumbed through it. I said, don't listen to these people. You are really published.
Yeah.
You've got a great book here. You need to find someone else to back you instead of this group, because this group is not going to help you.
So I had one more thing to add to the. This is because of one of my friends. We all have. I'm pretty sure most of us on here know this person. If you don't, you should probably know her. But when sitting and selling your book at a table, you are basically selling yourself.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And one of my friends, her name is Michaela, author Michaela Jade. She is not only wonderful, she's also one of the people that helped me get published with my solo novel. But when selling yourself, you have to also present yourself.
Hmm.
She has told me, because she started taking me to all of the comic and book conventions and stuff like that, and she was like, you have to sell yourself. If you are sitting down and you look bored, nobody's gonna want to sit there and be like, if you're sitting there just texting on your phone and stuff, like, nobody's gonna want to sit there and be like, hey, I want to get something from this person. So she goes all out. She wears she normally wears this really cute, like, fancy looking dress and stuff like that, and she presents herself nicely. She doesn't look all frumpy and just like wearing a sweatshirt, playing on her phone the whole time. She is standing on her feet, which is awful, by the way, for those of us that have done it. Like, standing on your feet for an entire, 8 hours while people are just walking past you is awful. But she was like, you have to present yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a very important lesson, because I'm one of those people, like I said, I talk to anybody, but I have gone places and seen people just sitting there, not interacting with people. And I'm like, I wouldn't even want to buy something from them, because they don't even look like they're interested in their own work. So how am I supposed to be interested in
Exactly.
Sorry, Chris. I usually have something to hand out to people, like, "Hey, would you like a sneak peek of what's coming up next?" Or if I do a lot of events where I'm in a booth with different authors, so I will actually stand out in the aisle and say, "Hey, would you like a bookmark?" and pass out different people's bookmarks. And then usually they'll take like 3 steps and go, "Wait, what is this?" And, "Oh, we're a group of authors." "Oh, cool. And what do you like to read?" And then I'll try to direct them to the right person.
Mhm.
And then sometimes it's not only me, because if someone likes true crime, for instance, I'm like, "Oh, you need to talk to this person."
Right. And for those of you who are listening to the audio only, Don Doulas has had some great comments come up on the screen, saying, I needed to hear and see this today. And also that Michaela is the reason Don is here. So, you know what? Thank you so much, Don. And thank you, Michaela, for getting people connected with this resource.
Yes, Michaela is going to be at Cabbages and Kings in Peoria Heights later today, and she will have her dragon on her fancy dress.
Yeah, she presents herself, like I said, she has that wow factor that's going to bring people over and get interested, because she dresses like her books. She has a whole series, and she dresses like you would imagine the characters in those books to dress. And it's just one of those eye-catching things that's like, oh, that might be cool. Let's go look at that.
Yes, Carl.
If I may interrupt, we have a friend who has written 2 books, okay? And I won't mention her name unless she wants it to be done, but they might be called Scorcher and Thin Ice. And,
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about.
yeah, look those up on Amazon. Anyway, and we were, someone had told her that she really needed to get a third book. Oh, thank you. Love you too, Kelly. Anyway, someone had told her you really need to get a third book before people will really pay attention to you. And she kind of came over and was talking to me about it. And I said, yeah, pretty much. Sorry. I'm really nice.
To the man who has 2 books on the table.
I had more than that on there. But it really helps if you have, because we went to a convention recently with some new authors. And they had a big 8-foot table. And they had a stack of the one book they wrote in the middle. And that does not help you. You really need to dress your table a little bit if you only have one book.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Molly said, have some to give out, some table swag to give out, or something to draw people over. Because if they just see one book, they're going to go right by. Now, Keisha does some art too, and she will have her books and her art out there. And that slows people down enough. If you can slow them down enough, and they might, not just run by your table. Sometimes these people are like Usain Bolt. They're just like
a lot of the times they walk past my table and they're like, what is this artwork? And I'm like, that is a gory, misfigured something. And they're like, oh, really? And they're like, you have a book. And I was like, I have a book. And they're like, what's the book about? Well, look at the artwork. It's like, just read the book. It does help to have something else to draw them in.
Right.
And to piggyback on what Carl was saying is that when I did Necessary Evil and set up at the expo, I had the one book. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to make it to the convention until like a week before.
Yeah.
Because things were just chaotic. So I wasn't even able to get copies of Lost Born ready to sell. So I only had the one thing. But I'm also a voice actor. So what I did is I set up information about the voice acting things that I did. And I'd have this thing that I do to keep my skills sharp when I'm in between jobs. I go on Facebook and say, hey, uplifting voicemail. You got a problem today? Request a voice. I'm going to send it. I'm going to send you some uplifting. It's usually evil voices because that's what I do. And I put that on the table. And people would come by and go, oh, like, hey, the cover looks great and the artwork looks great that you have. And they would ask about the voice acting. So at the last convention I did, I had a lot of people come over and they would ask for, oh, dude, hey, give me Stitch, give me Lucifer Morningstar from Lucifer. They just started, and I would just do the voice. And they would go, wow, man, that was great. And that led to a conversation. Every time somebody did that, I sold a book. Every single time.
I have something to add to what Molly was saying earlier as she hands pamphlets and stuff out. One of the things that I use on a daily basis almost is a pen from author Amy Hale. And it's Hale's Angels. And I also have like a keychain from her that is on my keys. And even if the author isn't there or you don't buy that book right away, if you give them a little bit of something with your information on it, it's stuck with them. Like, I use it on a daily basis and I'm like, I remember talking to this person and now I want to buy their stuff. And I do. So also giving something, even if somebody can't afford to buy your book at that moment, because a lot of the times people don't have a lot of money to spend and they're going to like 100 tables or they're looking at 100 different things. Even just giving them a little postcard or a little homemade bookmarker that they could use for free, that also puts your name out there and reminds them that, hey, I should go check this person out again.
Right.
I ran out of inventory this summer. So what I did was I made up little postcards with the QR code that led them directly to the Amazon link. I don't know if there have any of them have panned out yet, but it was just a way of saying, yes, this book does exist.
You know, it can be hard to know which marketing things are working for a while too, and that's another reason you can't assume that your writing is bad, because sometimes you're still figuring out your marketing approach. Speaking of marketing, Don Dula said that marketing Michaela does drew me in. Her excitement drew me in. Her passion has been beyond words. So if you're just coming in, some of the advice that we could sum up here would be: 1, authors support other authors and are great resources for each other. 2, just because you haven't gotten a lot of sales yet doesn't mean your writing was bad. There's a lot of marketing that has to be done. You're not done once you're published. And 3, you definitely want to find these specific authors that I have here. Speaking of which, we're running super low on time, so I'm going to put those images up again for each of our authors here. Molly Daniels has also written as Kenzie Michaels. You can find her at mollydaniels.wordpress.com. Chris Jowers wrote Lostborn, and I just completely forgot your other title. Yes, okay, there we go. You can find his stuff at chrisjowers.com, CHRISJOWERS. Molly Daniels is MOLLYDANIELS, because we do have people who are listening to only the audio. Keisha Acuff, who wrote him, you can find her at smashwords.com/profile/view. I'm going to spell her name for you. KEISHAACUFF. Donna Carlene, who wrote Waiting on a Star and so many others. You can find her on lulu.com. It's lulu.com/Donna Carlene if you're having trouble with that URL, because I checked all of you out before this. If you are on Lulu and you search Donna Carlene, DONNACARLENE, you will find her. Don't worry. And then we've got author Carl Witzman, also on lulu.com/KARLWITSMAN. So, did I miss anything on anywhere for people to find you?
If you want Donna's best works, you might have to check the part that says show explicit content. Just saying. Okay.
Hey,
Yeah,
it was named The Seduction of Lily Monroe. There had to be sex in it.
Hulu is also very strict about who can see what ratings of stuff, I have noticed. So,
and piggybacking on Keisha's imaginary friend, what if your imaginary friend turned out to be an alien? That's the premise of the sci-fi. Cards Less Chance is the first one.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you all so much. I could have talked to you all for another hour just about like marketing your books, let alone any of the other advice you have for everyone. Thank you so much for offering your services to other authors and encouragement to all of each other. We are here for the Multiverse FunRaiser. So I'm going to run some information now about how you can donate to the John Ritter Foundation. We are up to $636 of our $2,000 goal last time I looked, and we're only halfway through day 2. So here is more information on that. Bye, everybody.
Our charity partner for this year's Multiverse FunRaiser is the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health. They exist to spread awareness of aortic health and prevent unnecessary suffering through genetic research, widespread education, and radical advocacy. Simply click on the link at our website, www.themultiversefundraiser.com, that says donate here, and that will take you to our Just Giving link. All donations go directly to the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health. As a bonus, every $10 donation that you give enters you into our sweepstakes to win fantastic prizes. All information can be found at our website under giveaway. So thank you for watching and thank you for supporting.